Hello, it's me again! And you might be wondering why I'm showing you this when this has only been a video quite recently. Well, I'm just starting off here. What I've decided to do is to just do a quick recap of some work, because I've done so many videos and I think a lot of them have got kind of lost somewhere way down in the early days of my making videos, and there's so many of them that they may be overlooked, and I'm not entirely sure that I've covered everything that I'm going to cover today. So if you think I'm just repeating myself, then please feel free to tune out, but this is not what I'm going to be focusing on. I'm just starting here. So this is Which Way, featuring Gary, who posed for this early this year before he passed away. We will move swiftly on from that. I've also done a video on this, which was, let's try and come back up here. On the left we have the actual piece of artwork. There's a video quite recently on this, so I'm not going to focus on it, which is the Solstice Saviour 2021 piece that I will have done last December. So that's fairly recent, and you can see the video for that not that far back in the proceedings. I don't know when I covered this. This is Forgiveness. Now, somebody kind on Twitter has made this into a kind of a meme, if you like, whatever that is. It's like a kind of thing with writing under it. And it's the original piece, which I did give her permission to do. The original piece is called Forgiveness. It's pretty self-explanatory. This is the original, and she has made it into a little thing where it says forgiveness is all that animals need for us. And that is on my Twitter page somewhere, and hopefully, so if it's on hers, it will be spread around more, because my Twitter page gets virtually no attention whatsoever, because yet again I just appear to have kind of a repelling quality that people don't seem to go near whatever I put out. I just don't think that I network enough, or that I push myself enough, or that people are interested enough. It's an equation that I'll never know the answer to. But anyway, I just wanted to just go back over these, because I do think a lot of them have been lost in a kind of video frenzy of so many pieces of work. Now, some of them are landscape and some of them are portrait in this book. The one next to it here is called Mother's Day, or From One Mother to Another, and this is the original artwork for that. It's again fairly self-explanatory, and this would have been done if not last year, the episode maybe 2020, I think. I don't know. There was lots of gaps last year in actual artwork, because that last year was when I was embroiled with Gary trying to find somewhere to move to, which we had finally cracked. I think that is a story you've heard enough of now, but by now, because we'd finally cracked it, I probably would not be making this video. I would be shifting boxes. Well, somebody would be shifting boxes that I'd packed, and I'd be off to better places, but I'm not, and it's a very sad story that I've dwelled on too much. So we'll move on to the artwork, and on the left we have the original. This was sort of enhanced a little bit when I made the final sort of version, but because I think the paper that I had been working on was worked into too much. It's something that I've learned to overcome now, but previously, in fact I've only overcome it quite recently, because previously I was working into a piece, and it would just become, the paper would become very, very worn in places. So what was this one called? It wasn't called, oh for goodness sake, I've got to refer. So that one was called Forgiveness. That was called Never Too Late to Say You're Sorry. Never Too Late to Say You're Sorry. I think there was a video featuring that relatively recently too. And if we flip it around to the landscape version again, this is the lamb, cow, pig and turkey of God, which was just a sort of play on the whole idea of the Lamb of God, but all of those creatures are the creators, dear beloveds, as it were. So there's he, face I was particularly pleased with, because it conveys that tenderness that I try and try and strive for so often in my work. But I do again believe that somewhere not too far back there is a video that will cover this in more detail too. This is just a kind of a flip through, because I think a lot of you, especially if you've only just come to look at the tarot revamps and so forth, you will have missed a lot of the original artwork that I've covered for the few years that I've been doing this, and it's a shame because it's not getting seen anywhere. I haven't got the website, I haven't got, or the Twitter doesn't get any sort of notice whatsoever. Can't do it on Instagram because I haven't got that kind of a phone. I've got no other outlet, so if I am recapping on things that you've already seen, please forgive me. Now this is something I did for Hunt Watch, which is called Public Face Private Hell, which was associated, drawing attention to the fact that the men in the red coats, the people in the red coats, treat their hounds much less well behind the scenes than they do in the public face of they love their dogs. But these are images actually taken from photographs that I've compiled into one image, and that is a print of it there. And again, I think there is a video of this somewhere. And Hunt Watch are an organisation that I was contacted on Twitter, and I did that for them. Again, I think this is one you've seen before. This is For All Our Relations. I believe that's what it's called. And it covers pretty much every type of creature, kin, human and non-human. Don't think there are any unseen beings in here. I think this is purely for the mammals and the fish and so forth that are seen in our reality. The printed version has got some amendments to it, but that is the original artwork there. Of course you're seeing these through plastic sleeves because I just can't be taking them all out all the time. They're just going to get too worn. I hope that's giving you a clear enough view. Underneath we have only a print, I'm afraid. This is something else I did for Hunt Watch to draw attention to the fact that they were putting nets over caves and buildings to stop birds nesting there. So I covered somebody's house in netting and put them all outside trying to get in the same way as the birds were. Obviously it's very different for humans because these people could go and find a sharp pair of secateurs or something and let themselves in, but it just drew attention to that point, and I did that for them. And I think as well there is a video about that somewhere. So that's one, but this is going back a bit further. So these are the colour illustrations from one of my favourite, probably my favourite book that I wrote, Wild Spirituality, which is the most up-to-date one besides the Everyday Enchantment deck, but the one that covers my ethos, the green-spirited ethos, the wild-spirited ethos, Journey to the Green Heart of Being. I think that covers it most succinctly if you were interested in buying something that really encapsulates my ethos. Anyway, these are the coloured versions of it, and I can't quite... So if I do that, you're going to get lots of other extraneous bits and pieces in from this one, but it's again focusing on the tenderness of the people involved and their relationship with the creatures. In this case there's a little pigeon there. There is a little unseen being hiding in the rafters. So none of these have particular names, they're just because they were illustrations to the book. It'd be really hard turning these pages with these gloves on. Anyway, on to the next one. I think they did have names actually, because I would have had to have stored them to send them, and I think this was called Growing Heart. I think they all had heart in the titles. Again, it's the faces of the people, and the little boy there with the worm in his hand, looking totally mesmerised at the miracle of life in his hand, and the pride of... Let's see if I can move it down there a bit. There we go. If I do that, actually, you can just see both of them, so I can just talk about both of them and then we can look at some details if it's necessary. So yes, I hope you can see both of those. This is Free Hugs. It's very self-explanatory. Two men in the street. This was going very much towards the bit of a goopy mouth there. This is going a bit towards the Everyday Enchantment deck. All of these works were, for this book, were kind of the precursors of the Everyday Enchantment art, so very much taken in the context of things you would see every day. And you can really see that there, can't you? How that would, the next phase from that would be to move on to the Everyday Enchantment Tarot with the magic in the mundane, because those both really sum it up very well, I think. We have a kind of green man, older face looking through hawthorn there on the left, and he's rather lovely. And a bee, there's always as many of the representatives of other creatures in there. And on the right one I'm not so happy with, one of the ones that wasn't so successful, is a lady sitting in the woods with a kingfisher, a heron and a dragonfly. But there's those two together. Some of these I wasn't so happy with. I was more focused on writing the book and getting that as perfect, as edited down and perfect as I could. So the artwork, although it's nice, some of it isn't as good as it could be because that wasn't my the main focus. If only there wasn't something with this camera that makes me turn into a kind of Stanley Unwin figure. For anyone who's old enough to remember Stanley Unwin, I feel like sometimes I become him when I make videos, because I just turn into either I get the wrong words for things or I just forget words completely. It's I'm so glad I was never an actor. I would have been a terrible actor, I really would. But I do like reading and I do like talking to you. It's just that there's something about doing it through a camera. Moving on, as you can see, these are two self-explanatory ones. There is a family in the woods watching the deer. This was based on a walk that Gary and I used to take through the woods, which we did actually see these deer crossing like that in front of us, and I remember that wonderful feeling that it gave me. That's not me, by the way, but... And there's also a little unseen being here that is mesmerising these two. Lots in here, another unseen being in the tree, and the owl that we always used to hear. The owl, as soon as it started to go dark, we would hear the owl hooting, the tawny owl calling, and then another one would call, and they were all kind of waking up and shouting their territory and hello, I'm here. So that kind of had a personal resonance to me. I like these very much, and the thrill of seeing foxes playing. A friend of mine currently has urban foxes in her garden, and I know she feels very much like this about it when they're coming out to play. Just so beautiful. I remembered sitting on a hill in broad daylight watching fox cubs play, and once you've had that experience, you cannot understand. I mean, you can't understand it anyway if you've got an ounce of empathy or compassion in you, or understand the oneness of all beings. But once you've seen fox cubs playing and their mother sitting by watching them with such pride and joy, you cannot imagine how anybody would want to hurt them. And if you're going to fall back on the old argument of, well, foxes hurt things, yes, because they have to eat. We don't have to eat the foxes, we just brutalise them and rip them apart. And foxes cache things, so they go in and they kill lots of things, so because they think they can come back later and pick them up, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, I'm sticking with that, because foxes are just doing what they do, where humans don't need to do those things at all. Now you probably recognise her because I do use her face in other things. It's a lovely woodland scene. Again, all of these are from the Wild Spirituality book. I've just coloured them in. There's a nice little vignette in the background with a woodpecker and an elf figure and a badger, tiny little badger. And I'll just come up so you can see the both. And on the right you've got a figure building a rock sculpture, something like Gary that used to love doing, and somebody just standing in the rain on the moors, just enjoying being out there. And there's all the buzzards flying above, and the man still working in the rain because he's intent on finishing that lovely piece of wild rock art. There's so many little creatures here. There's some wild ponies, there's a crow, I don't know whether it's a crow or a raven, it's a goose. These are well, these two are lovely, I think. I say this without any trumpet blowing. I know I keep saying that, but I do say it without any trumpet blowing. I'm just pleased with them. Pleased with, like, for her head piece there with the passiflora in it and the feathers. Just little things. I think, yeah, you did that okay. That was good, because I have such a love for these things, and I have such a love for colour and for faces and for just bringing it all together. Because so when I look back on it, I think that's really, yeah, you did justice to that. That's. Or it could always be better. It could always be better, but, you know, pleased with it. Not pleased with this one or this one, so I'm not going to dwell on them except for the bits that I like, i.e. this boy's face, where it says dream big. I love his face. I think he's just wonderful. And there's a little child down there that's playing with the sand, and her mother there with her shoes off. I like her too. Just altogether is not a very happy composition. And there's also a pair of hands holding lots of little bits of stone or sand. Yes, so I'm not really happy with it overall, so we're not going to dwell on that. On this next one, I'm not happy with it overall either, but I will look at her because she's very, very sweet. It'll go in the background with the watering can, the man with the plant that he's carrying across the road for somebody. So you can see again how these are very much, because that's a very urban scene. Sorry, it's not an urban scene, it's a suburban scene, isn't it? You see, words. With somebody moving plants for somebody else. And you've got a little dog down there and some starlings. The other day, in one of my videos, I called a thrush a starling, which I could not believe that I did. And not too happy with the next ones either. There are bits of it that I like. She was ecstatic in the woods, with all the autumn leaves falling. I like the little jogging man. Again, this would fit perfectly in the everyday enchantment deck, because it's just a scene you would see every day. And there is magic in it, so that's the connection again. And with this you have the father feeding the birds with his daughter, and there's such, I love his face. He's so happy to be sharing that moment with his daughter and with the birds. It's a lovely little moment. And the woman there staring out over the water, and I like the water, and I like the birds, and I like the little, and the man there with his wife in a wheelchair or his partner and their child, and there's a little mallard down the bottom. So yes, these two not so successful because this one is far too small, far too crowded, but if you go into it, it's quite nice in parts, but too much overall, too much detailing, and when it came out it was too small. So, and it was too dark because this was printed obviously in black and white or grayscale, and so it just lost it. So there's another one anyway. I like the idea of this, but it wasn't done too well. I love his face. I love the fact that he is this supposedly tough nut in his garden where he's feeding the birds, and he's looking at the hydrangeas. I hope I've got that right. I'm sure they are hydrangeas. But I wasn't quite happy with the way that the posture of him, but I do love his face and the colours in it, and the fact that he's defying the conventions of how you'd expect him to be behaving. And that again would fit into the Wild Enchantment deck. And now we're on to the Wild Enchantment deck, the ones that got away. I think we'll make another video about this because I'm on to 18, or I'll start it and then I'll carry on. With these are the ones that got away. This was my original version of the Ace of Cups. Now I may have showed you this before, but it was quite a long time ago, I think. Now this is a totally different setting because I moved it into a swimming pool. This is a sports team with their trophy. I thought it would go much better with a group of swimmers. Love the little man in the corner there, the little unseen man in the corner, unseen being showing through. Blackbird, lovely. That background there, it just didn't feel quite right, in the same way that this one didn't feel quite right. Now it's very, very similar to the one that was in the actual finished deck. 8. I had to count them there. This is the Eight of Cups, yes. In the other one, she's much more central, the figure that's walking away. It just didn't quite... I mean, I like it still, and maybe you like this one better, but there was something I didn't quite like, the way that being was in the background. It was just didn't quite do it, but there are some lovely moments in it. Moments? Can we call them moments? There are little segments, little pieces of loveliness. Look at the bubbles in the sink. So I'm showing you these because they're just going to sit in this folder and nobody might see them. And if you miss the videos that were from way back and you're just looking at the ones that are coming up now, you're not going to see them. So forgive me. I expect anyone that's seen these before will have already tuned out, so that's okay. This is for people who haven't seen them before. This was the original Queen of Blades, and she is quite stern and yes, didn't quite, although she's quite similar to the one that I ended up with, she is being quite harsh with the patient, I think, and that didn't feel quite right, although it's been done perfectly well. And I had to make some really hard choices, and this, you can see how much work went into the Everyday Enchantment deck, because, you know, it's like, oh, I've done all this and I'm going to have to do it all again. But, you know, perfectionism, it had to be right. It didn't matter how long it took. Ditto with this one. I wasn't happy with this one either. And also I'd made some kind of, the paper had started to wrinkle up and so forth. But she has a lovely face. I'm pleased with her. And yes, there are some, again, some nice parts of that one, but that was not the face I wanted centrally, much as she's nice. Yes, so that's the Three of Cups anyway. This one, Ace of Wands, just wasn't right at all. It was supposed to be, there's an empty space next to this one, it was supposed to be somebody cleaning up litter, doing a kind of barefoot run along the road, sweeping up litter, and it was a bit too obscure. It's like, yes, I know you've got your bag there to clear the litter up and they're all happy about it, but doesn't really work. And, you know, nice piece of art, but it was a bit too, I remember showing, my mum was my testing ground for all of these back then, and I remember her looking a bit kind of, what's going on there, and if she didn't understand it, then it wasn't going to happen. Now I think this is Queen of Wands, which obviously turned into the lovely Conductress, and again I wasn't happy about that, and the wand was the microphone stand. I'm going to get cut off, so I'll just show you these two quickly. So that was Queen of Wands. She's lovely, she's beautiful, and obviously confident, has all those wands qualities, but I thought I could make it a bit more dynamic, that it should be a bit more dynamic, and that there was a better way of doing it, and there was, as it turned out. But there are lots of these men taking photographs turned up again in the next Queen of Wands, the ones that actually made it into the deck, and he made it into the deck too on this one with the Four of Coins, but I didn't like his grumpiness. He was far too fierce. I didn't think the arrangement, the composition was good enough on that one, so I had to rearrange it. Again, sad to let go, because there are some, you know, there are elements that went across to the other one, to the one that I used. I took some of the elements out and made them into a better composition. But, you know, I had to admit that was not quite as good as it could be. Right, we'll stop there and come back with another video. What a surprise, there's a part 2. Please watch part 1 first though, it's always a good idea.